Hi, everybody, and welcome back to OMN Insights. My name is Soreti Kadir, and I'm your host. And this week, I am very excited to be bringing you a conversation about the operations of the company MIDROC Mining PLC, and by extension, MIDROC Investment Group in Ethiopia, and their collective operations in the Legadembi area in Guji, in Shakiso Guji, and the impacts that this mining has been having on the local community for some years. Now, to have this conversation, we're going to be talking to an expert on the issue, Dr. Asebe Regassa, a lecturer and a researcher at the University of Zurich. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Asebe.
Thank you, Soreti, for having me.
So, Dr. Asebe, on April 26, 2023, Human Rights Watch issued an extensive report where it stated that, and I quote here, an assessment carried out at the Ethiopian government's request found that local residents had experienced serious health effects. This is due to the operations of the mine, the gold mine by MIDROC in Legadembi. And a MIDROC resumed operations, apparently with a license from the government, but without any apparent steps to reduce pollution, even though the government had said it was suspending its license until pollution issues were resolved. Now, the Legadembi mine was closed after protests by residents of the Guji region in 2018 and had led to an investigation that commenced, but the mining company's license was renewed in 2021 without any of the grievances that the community were raising during those protests having been addressed. Now, you have conducted extensive research on the effects of MIDROC Mining PLC's operations on the local community in Legadembi, and you did this research in, I believe, 3 phases. Can you briefly tell us the purpose of each phase of your research and what your key findings in each of these phases of research were, and especially as these findings relate to the health and environmental impacts the mine is having in Legadembi?
Yeah, thank you, Soreti. This Human Rights Watch report is also very much in consistency with my research, which I've been conducting over the last 10 years, actually. So to begin with my research, as you said, I've been conducting that in 4 different categories. And I started a small phase of research in 2016. It came out in 2016 as a report. By that period, I took my own initiative because I knew what was going on in the area, and I had a background information. For example, in 2009, there was a massive protest in Guji zones when secondary school students protested, and then schools were closed down. I was teaching in Dilla University, which is close to the Guji zones. So I was aware of this, and then I started conducting research in 2015, 2016. In my report on that period, which was, as I said, a very small research report, I came with a kind of small preliminary finding that the local communities in that area had a very deep discontent about the operation of the mine, about their exclusion from opportunities, and also about the health impact. But by that period, I didn't know much about the health impact because I didn't get access to the areas. And you know, 2015, 2016 was a very strong security crackdown in Oromia. But then I started in 2018, particularly after a media report exposing the health and the environmental impact of the mine. So during those research, which I also conducted individually as with myself and also with my colleagues in Dilla University and Buleora University, we came out with a very detailed investigation about human health impact on livestock, or impact on the environment in general, and this was related to toxic pollution from the chemical released to the water to the environment. So that report actually came out with a very detailed finding, and I could actually explain in in different dimensions. One, health impact, health and environmental impact. Another one, also socioeconomic impact of the mine. So in terms of the health impact, I want to really underline that it had a very disastrous impact on local communities in terms of stillbirths, for example, pregnancy miscarriage on women, children paralysis, as you might have also seen in on the media, skin disease, respiratory diseases, and so on. And this is related to people's exposure to toxic chemicals and the polluted water, which other research actually, like in the areas of health, found out that heavy metals like arsenic, zinc, and also toxic chemicals like mercury and cyanide were released to nearby rivers. So this was the social, this was the mainly the health impact. In terms of socio-economic impact of the mine as well, people were deliberately excluded from 1997 to 2018 during the MIDROC operation. Local communities were excluded from accessing job in the area, or even from accessing artisanal mining, or using their farmlands in the valley, for example. So this had its own consequence on the livelihood of the people, on their economic aspects. And finally, as you see, it led to complete marginalization, complete social crisis, I would say. The number of people, the number of children who are suffering from this impact are so many, and it is only a few of them. I went to the village, the 4 nearby villages, and I knew each and every kids around the area, but there are many who were also not exposed because of the cultural impacts and people stigmatization, that people also fear that if their children have such paralysis, then the community might segregate them. So there are many dimensions which we could talk in that regard, actually.
Thank you, Dr. Asebe. What would it take is it possible actually for a company like MIDROC or anyone who's mining a mineral like gold to do it without releasing this level of toxic chemicals into the environment, whether it's the air or whether it's the water sources? And if it's possible, why do you think MIDROC is not taking these measures? Or why are we seeing these effects of the mining operation? Is there something that they're not doing? Is there something that MIDROC is doing deliberately?
Well, in any mining operation, the first precondition was supposed to be environmental safety measures to be put in place. That means chemicals are usually used for cleaning and separating gold from the sand and so on, from the rocks also. Chemicals are used, and in that there are some chemicals which are not actually supposed to be used. MIDROC was using that. For example, mercury. Mercury is banned from, globally it is banned from being used. Cyanide is also the same. But there are evidence that MIDROC has been using those chemicals. But in any case, if there are some other chemicals which could also be possibly used, but there are conditions where this toxic waste could be treated through technologies, and that is possible. And I mean, gold is mined everywhere globally, and it is not as such like the Legadembi case, which we see the damage. The question is, why is MIDROC not treating the water? Why is it not giving priority to the health of the local communities, to the environment? This is about negligence. Absolute negligence from the company, from MIDROC, as well as absolute negligence from the state itself, from the government. If the government from the federal level to the regional levels and so on doesn't care about the people, but only about the economy, then such consequences occur actually. And this is not the only case. There are many other cases we know, for example, about the flower industries in around Finfinne, for example, around Batu area, around Sabata, and other places in Oromia. There have been such toxic chemicals which caused also health problems that come from negligence of the state. But when we come particularly to this MIDROC, as I said, the company doesn't want to invest on environmental treatment and on human health. It wants to maximize its profits, but at the same time, it is operating within the authoritarian state system where the state doesn't listen to the voice of the people. We know what have been happening from 1997 to 2018, the 20 years of MIDROC operation. But very sadly, MIDROC was given again, I think we'll come to that the dimension, but it was also given a license to be renewed in 2021 without even addressing the concerns of the people in terms of the environmental impact, in terms of the health impact, in terms of even the economic questions that the people have on the company or generally on the resource. So I would say it is something possible to treat, to avoid. It was avoidable, but due to negligence, this happened to the people, and it is, I would say, it is one of the global tragedies of human beings that we observe in Guji area.
Thank you for that, Dr. Asebe. And in fact, you've really brought us, you've segued us well into the second part of our conversation here in terms of understanding who is to be held accountable for this environmental and really human violence upon human beings that we're seeing. So, you know, you've mentioned this, MIDROC bought the mine from the Ethiopian government in 1997. And it's only after extensive advocacy by affected communities that the renewal of the mining license was suspended, which seemed promising as the government did support extensive investigation into the concerns of the community, particularly around the effect of the mine and the effect the mine was having on the health of people, livestock, and the overall environment. But as you mentioned, the license was still reissued in 2021. Interestingly, there was also a tweet made by the government's official Twitter accounts announcing the release of Mohammed Al-Muddin from prison in Saudi Arabia, Al-Muddin being the head of MIDROC Investment Companies and MIDROC Mining PLC as well. And so with all of this in context, who should be held accountable for the devastation that's being caused? I mean, you mentioned that the state has a hand in this, but how responsible is the state? Who do you view to be the state actors in terms of identifying accountability in this? And then, of course, how would you direct accountability towards MIDROC in this as well? Is it the entire company? Is it Mining PLC? How do you view accountability in this context?
Yeah, let me give you a context about the pre-2018 and post-2018 situation. As you rightly said, the license was suspended into 2018 because of the protests, because of the advocacy, and because of the exposure of the impact through the media and so on. During those early months, you know, when Abiy Ahmed came to power, and then the transition, the political transition, which was kind of promising by then, the government seems to be on the side of the people, brought researchers together, local scholars and local community members to discuss about the possible pathway, and then said it would not be renewed until a comprehensive research would be conducted and until the impacts would be addressed. So it was during those period, I also took part in some of the meetings, at least at the federal and regional levels, when they were inviting local scholars, I mean scholars from those areas and so on. But finally, what I came to know or to realize was the government was not genuine, even by that period. When they were calling for research and so on, it wanted to use research as a legitimizing instrument to say, okay, research is done, the impact is minimal, and we give a certain amount of compensation to the people, and then we reopen. I remember one of the meetings we had with the deputy Minister of Mines by then, and he was saying, now we are the leaders of the country, and we have no money, and it would be a shame if we are in economic crisis while we are the leaders. And he was kind of lobbying the people, I mean the participants, including the Abagadas and so on, to convince the youth who were protesting, saying, please go and then convince your youth so that we utilize the resource. So the idea was that. But what happened was our research, in which I was also involved, and the research conducted by the Ethiopian Public Health Institute became very critical. It was very critical about the impact. It was very critical about even in terms of proposing solutions. And then the government didn't want to expose that or to make it public, actually. The Minister of Mines said this research should not be public at all. Then that happened in 2019. And then we know the situation since 2019. And then in 2021, in March 2021, without addressing any of those concerns, only by co-opting a few local elites and business individuals, then they reopened the mine. So now what I would say is, before 2018, MIDROC and the federal government were had absolute control over the mine. The Oromia regional state and the local authorities didn't have much say, because it was a very authoritarian top-down, and the MIDROC had its own, was not even listening to Oromia regional state government and so on in pre-2018. So when we talk about accountability, the first one would be the mine, the company, to be accountable for what it was causing. And the second one is the state, the government. And which government? I mean, it is a different state structure. The federal government, particularly the Ministry of Mines, the Ministry of Environment, all those directly related to this company should be accountable. But in the post-2018, even the Oromia regional state has a strong stake in the reopening of the mine. That is what I wanted to bring in, because even it was the head of the Bureau of Mines, Oromia Bureau of Mines, that was who was trying to convince the local communities and also intimidating people who were voicing against the reopening. Many people were arrested. Many people were put in jail because they were saying, how should this mine be reopened while our questions are still not addressed? So when we talk about accountability, the mine or the company is the first to be accountable. The government, the federal government, the Oromia regional state, even the local government authorities who are complicit or at least silent, have also their own level of accountability. But I also want to mention, particularly this time, in the post-2018, local elites, local businessmen, and generally Oromo activists have a moral obligation. Although it might not be a legal accountability, but they have a moral obligation and a moral accountability for not being on the voice of the people. Because many people now became silent, although the consequence of the mine is becoming so alarmingly increasing. Many people are reported to have died, even in the last few years, 2 years, 3 years after the mine reopened. So it goes into many directions. But generally speaking, to summarize, the government and the company are the most actors to be accountable in this regard.
Dr. Asebe, that response was really deeply revealing about the nature of the dynamics and the collusion, I guess, between the state, and as you mentioned and you identified the different state structures that are involved in different periods and their level of collusion with MIDROC. So I really appreciate that response. And you also mentioned that the government was kind of cracking down on people who continued to voice these grievances, because the approach they began to take post-2018 was trying to use community leaders, elders and such to get people to quiet down. In terms of this crackdown, this was also mentioned briefly in the Human Rights Watch report about a level of collusion between the police at a regional level in Oromia and also MIDROC security forces. And it was also mentioned in, I think, both of the documentaries that are available, OBN and OMN, or at the very least one of them, interviews given by people who have been arrested on MIDROC property, really outside of the bounds of regional law or federal law in Ethiopia. Did you come across any of this in your research or hear of this?
Exactly. Let me give you one quotation from my research. They say, local communities say, MIDROC is the government. That means in terms of this crackdown, in terms of the violence it perpetrates on the people, it had its own security personnel, which could not only arrest people, but also could shoot to death. There were many people who were reported to have died or being killed by the security personnel of the company. And there were many people who also witnessed in my interview that they were arrested and they were put in jail. It had its own jail in the concession sites. No one would know where the person was taken, and then sometimes they were tortured for weeks and then released. And after that, it is to silence any voice around that case. But during the period, they were also doing this in collaboration with the federal government, actually. There were a federal military who were stationed around that area, and they were, MIDROC was strongly linked and working together with the federal government, with the federal security apparatus and so on. But now, the Oromia regional states, it is police force, and the security are also the ones particularly who are cracking down against local voices, saying you are sympathizers of the OLA and so on. Also, the people are only asking for their rights over the resource without any link to the opposition. They were accusing them of being sympathizers or being members of the OLA. But the report from the Human Rights Watch, as well as also there was another report in 2019 by the New Humanitarian, an international organization, also released about the same. It was very consistent. So such crackdowns are there. Now the regional state has also its own stake, because it wants to silence any voices, because the Oromia regional government has its own company also operating side by side with MIDROC in Guji, which is a Tumsa endowment company. So yeah, it is massive and widespread.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Asebe. Again, really deeply revealing and insightful. We're going to come back to our conversation in just a minute. We have a short announcement to play before we finish up here.
Sagale Bridge Reality Gare Samuel Berhanuti Manni jireenya ala namaaf ni barbaachisa. Inni kuni garuu jireenya tulbuu horee yaada namaa boqochiisa, gaaddisa aargalfii ta'ee jiraachuuf nama sassachiisa. Maarree isinis kan akkanaa bitachuu yoo feetan, akkasumas kan ofii qabdan gurgurtanii bu'a qabeessa ta'uun gara xiqqaatti yookaan gara guddaatti jijjiirrachuu yoo barbaaddan dafaa mariisisaa. Bridge Reality Tora bilbila keenya 7637448 lamarratti nuuf bilbila. Bridge Reality Garee Samuel Berhanuti.
Dr. Asebe, as we come to the conclusion of our discussion, I want to know from you, what will the consequences be if this mine is not closed immediately? And what are the key recommendations that you've made through the research that you've conducted?
Well, in short, if this mine continues operating as it has been and as it is now, the human tragedy continues. There is no any other, there is nothing that I would say. The human tragedy continues. It also seems that the government and the company want to eradicate the people from that area so that they would have empty space for their economic trust. So that is what I would say. But the recommendations are as follows. I can give at least 4 recommendations, which is actually extracted from the research we conducted with colleagues and also my own research. The first one is accountability. Those actors involved in such human tragedy, as I've said, and a social crisis causing the environmental damage should be made accountable. The second one would be people who suffer psychologically in terms of health, in terms of economy, and in terms of social relations should be compensated. A proper and a comprehensive study should be done, and people should be compensated without any marginalization, without any exclusion. And it is not only people who physically suffer, like in paralysis and so on, but also the entire family. The psychological impact on the family, on the mothers, on the household in general, while they see their children, their beloved ones, either dying or being there for decades without being able to move, is a big psychological crisis and deserves compensation. And the third one is for any resource utilization like this. It is a national treasure, actually. I mean, it is a resource that the country should benefit from it. The region should benefit from it. The local people should benefit from it. But there should be a possibility and a mechanism, a framework in which appropriate benefit sharing mechanism put in place. Local communities should have their own share. A certain percentage should go down directly to the people so that health centers, schools, roads, and other social and economic facilities would be built. So this is a benefit, generally speaking. And the fourth one would be rehabilitation of the environment. Because even if we talk about compensation, even if we talk about benefits, unless that environment is treated well, that means generally about the environmental safety to be put in place. If it is a continuous releasing into the rivers, into the ponds, into the air, and into the other aspect of into the soil, then compensation doesn't really reverse the cause. Reverses the damage. So there should be a future-oriented safety mechanism put in place, whether it is MIDROC, whether it is any other company. Not only with MIDROC, there are many companies now operating in Guji area. There should be a similar approach of safety measures, particularly for the new ones. Learning from the impact of MIDROC, others should learn that from the very beginning to put in place a treatment mechanism of the waste disposal. So I would say with this, and also the company should be, there should be a framework how the corporate social responsibility could be put in place. Like companies operating somewhere should also be responsible to build schools, health centers, and to bring economic and social trickle down to the people. So with this recommendation, we submitted our report to the government. The government didn't want to listen to that by then. I hope now at least our people will listen to what we are recommending, and then they could ask for it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asebe. You've rightfully called the impacts that this mining operation is having in Legadembi a human tragedy, and you've also rightfully called the need to speak about it a moral obligation. And I thank you for living up to that moral obligation and sharing your insights and your knowledge with us today.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't really have much to add to that. I feel like it was deeply informative and a very necessary conversation to have, not just in understanding the impacts of MIDROC or the impacts of gold mining when done without consent and care for the community in Legadembi, but also understanding the effects that capitalist and state collusion can have on local communities, really anywhere in Oromia, anywhere in the world, anywhere in the global south. So that was Dr. Asebe Regassa, lecturer and researcher at the University of Zurich. You're watching OMN Insight. My name is Soreti Kadia, and I look forward to seeing you next week.